Right, so get ready, because today we're taking a deep dive into something pretty thought-provoking.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's the connection between success, confidence, and delusion. And I gotta say, you sent over some really fascinating research for this one, and honestly, I'm hooked already.
Great.
We've got excerpts from articles, research findings, and even some real-world examples.
Cool.
And the big question we're going to try to answer in this deep dive is, can a little bit of delusion actually help us be successful?
Yeah, it's a question that really challenges how we usually think about success, right?
Right.
We tend to think, success is all about hard work, talent, all that stuff. But what if there's something else going on? What if, like, a touch of delusion, maybe even a good amount of it, is a part of it all?
I know, right? And here's a stat that just totally blew my mind.
Okay.
Studies show that 80 to 85%
Wow.
of professionals think they're in the top 20% of their field.
Oh, wow.
So unless we're all living in Lake Wobegon, where all the children are above average,
Right.
something's a little off here, right?
Yeah.
It makes you wonder if maybe we're all a tad delusional about how good we actually are at things.
I think so. And that's where this concept of the success delusion comes in. It's this fascinating thing where a lot of successful people have kind of an inflated view of their own abilities.
Okay, so let's unpack this success delusion.
Sure.
What does that actually look like when you see it out in the world?
Well, you might see professionals like consistently overestimating where they rank among their peers.
Okay.
Which is kind of funny because research has shown that people who are struggling with depression, they actually tend to have a more accurate view of their abilities.
Right.
Yeah, compared to those who aren't depressed.
Interesting.
It's almost like having a slightly distorted view of yourself can actually be helpful for achieving success.
So maybe like having those rose-colored glasses on can help us push through challenges and stay motivated.
Yeah, that's the idea.
Okay.
Marshall Goldsmith, he's a really well-known executive coach. He outlines like 4 ways that this success delusion tends to show up.
Okay.
The first one, he calls it the I have succeeded mindset.
Okay.
And this is where people view their past successes as a guarantee for future success.
Right, like the I've done it before so I can do it again approach.
Exactly.
But I mean, is there really anything wrong with being confident based on your past wins?
Well, it becomes an issue when it makes you resistant to change.
I see.
Like, you might assume that what worked before will always work,
Right.
even when things have changed, right?
Yeah.
The world's always changing. And clinging to those old ways can hold us back.
Makes sense. So what's the next type of success delusion?
The second one,
Okay.
Goldsmith calls it the I can succeed people.
Okay.
This is the group that really believes that willpower alone can overcome any obstacle.
I think we all know a few people like that.
Yeah.
The ones who just believe that they can power through anything. It's exactly.
If they just try hard enough, so where's the problem there?
Well, while that can-do spirit can be great, it can also lead to burnout.
Right.
You know, these individuals, they might take on way too much.
Yeah.
Thinking they can handle it all.
Yeah.
And then end up spreading themselves way too thin.
Right. It's about finding that balance between ambition and your actual limitations.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then you have the I will succeed mindset.
All right.
This group is all about optimism.
Oh, okay.
Always looking at the bright side.
Well, that doesn't sound too bad. I mean, optimism can be really motivating.
It can.
Where does the delusion come in?
Well, optimism's great.
Yeah.
But it can go too far.
Okay.
And it can blur the line between
Yeah.
realistic goals and ones that are maybe a little irrational or too risky.
Right.
They might go after opportunities that other people would see as just not smart
Yeah.
because they're so sure they'll succeed no matter what.
So it's about having that optimism, but also having a healthy dose of realism.
Making sure our choices are based on logic.
Exactly.
Okay.
And finally, we've got the I succeed because of the way I am group.
All right.
So these are the folks who tend to think their success is all because of their own amazing qualities.
Oh, yeah.
And they downplay any external factors.
Like luck.
Luck, timing.
The I'm inherently awesome and that's why I'm successful type.
Exactly.
I can see how that would be a problem.
Yeah, the thing is they don't really recognize the role of other things.
Right.
Like you said, luck or supportive relationships, or even just being in the right place at the right time. This can make them kind of blind to their weaknesses.
Yeah.
And resistant to feedback, which isn't good for growth.
So they're filtering out any information that doesn't fit with this I'm amazing story.
Exactly.
Even if it means missing out on valuable insights.
Right. They're really picky about what feedback they accept.
Okay.
Like they love praise, but dismiss anything that contradicts their self-image. So their confidence keeps growing, even if it's built on shaky ground.
It's like they're creating this reality where they're always the hero.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, how does this actually play out
Right.
in the real world?
Yeah.
Do you have any examples
Yeah, definitely.
that show this delusional confidence in action?
Think about drag queens, for example.
Okay.
They often have this incredible self-assurance
Yeah.
that some people might even see as delusional.
That's a great example. They always seem so confident,
Right.
owning their uniqueness and like pushing boundaries.
Exactly. They challenge norms and push the boundaries of self-expression in a way that you really need a ton of confidence for.
Right.
And even if it starts as an act, that confidence can become real,
Mm-hmm.
and it empowers them to challenge conventional ideas about beauty.
So that initial like delusional confidence can actually help them grow and discover themselves.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Okay.
It can be a powerful tool
Mm.
for self-empowerment and for challenging the status quo.
Okay.
We also see this play out in other places like the corporate world.
Oh, yeah.
Like, think about those people who climb the corporate ladder super fast.
Ah, yeah, the corporate climbers.
Yeah.
The ones who always seem to know the right people, say all the right things, and just navigate all that office politics with ease.
Exactly. Those individuals, they often have a lot of self-belief.
Yeah.
Sometimes to the point of delusion.
Okay.
They totally believe in themselves, and they're good at seizing opportunities.
Right.
Which can help them reach ambitious goals, but that same drive and ambition can sometimes show up in ways that aren't so great.
Okay.
Like narcissism.
Gotcha.
They might prioritize themselves over others, manipulate situations, and lack empathy.
So there's that fine line between confidence
Yes.
and potentially harmful delusion.
Exactly. It can be a double-edged sword.
Right.
That's why we need to explore both sides, the good and the bad, to understand how delusional confidence can be both beneficial and a potential pitfall.
This makes me think about how we usually view delusions. We tend to see them as just negative.
Yeah.
Something to be scared of or avoid.
Right.
But you mentioned earlier
Yeah.
that delusions can sometimes be protective.
They can.
Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, so we usually associate delusions with mental illness, but it's way more complicated than that.
Okay.
Delusions, even though they distort reality, can actually be helpful in some ways.
Okay.
It's like they can buffer against painful experiences,
Yeah.
provide meaning in a world that can feel really chaotic, and even help us make sense of things we perceive
Right.
that don't fit into how we understand the world.
So are you saying that delusions can be like a coping mechanism?
Yeah.
Like when reality is too much,
Yeah.
a delusion can offer
Right.
a more comforting story.
That's a great way to put it. For example,
Okay.
someone struggling with low self-esteem might develop a delusion of grandeur,
Okay.
believing they have special powers or are destined for greatness.
Like their mind is creating a story to help them cope,
Exactly.
giving them a sense of hope
Yeah.
and control.
And even with delusions of persecution,
Okay.
where someone thinks they're being targeted or conspired against,
Right.
there can be a protective element.
How so? That sounds pretty negative.
Well, imagine someone who's constantly experiencing bad things. Instead of blaming themselves or feeling helpless, they might develop a delusion that outside forces are targeting them,
Okay.
which shifts the blame outward,
I see.
protects their ego,
Okay.
and gives them some feeling of control.
So it's not that the delusion itself is good,
Right.
but it's serving a psychological purpose,
Exactly.
helping them cope
Yeah,
with tough emotions or situations.
exactly. Now, we're not saying delusions are healthy,
Of course.
but we are saying they can serve a purpose.
Right.
And understanding that purpose is important for treatment.
Makes sense. This reminds me of that whole fake it till you make it idea.
Oh, yeah.
Is there a connection there?
Absolutely. That's a perfect example of
That's-
how we can use delusion in a controlled way to boost our confidence and motivation.
Right.
Like by acting as if we've already reached our goals.
Yeah.
We might actually feel happier and more driven,
Okay.
which can help us achieve those goals.
So we're kind of tricking our brains into believing something that's not true yet.
Right.
And that belief can then influence our actions,
Exactly.
leading to real results.
Our minds are amazing, right?
It is pretty wild. And there's even research suggesting that delusions can have positive epistemic consequences.
I know, it's a mouthful.
It is. Can you break that down for me?
Sure. It basically means that delusions can sometimes help people restore their ability to learn and make sense of the world, especially after their cognitive processes have been disrupted. Think of it like this.
Yeah.
After a major life event or trauma, our usual ways of thinking and understanding the world get shaken up.
Yeah.
And sometimes delusions can provide a framework for making sense of this new reality.
Interesting.
Allowing people to adapt and regain a sense of order.
So instead of just seeing delusions as bad, we can also see how they might help people be resilient.
Exactly.
And adapt.
It's about recognizing that the mind is super complex.
Right.
And even things we label as negative, like delusions, can have unexpected benefits.
This has been so insightful. But before we go too far down the positive side,
Yeah.
we need to remember there's another side to this.
Right.
We've explored the potential benefits of this delusional confidence. But when does it become harmful? When do those rose-colored glasses start to distort reality too much?
That's a crucial point.
Yeah.
And we need to talk about it. So we've talked about the good, but it's important to remember that unchecked delusional disorders can have serious consequences. And that's what we'll explore next. The dark side of delusional confidence.
All right, let's do it.
Okay, so let's talk about the downsides of this delusional confidence. Because, like we said, a little self-belief can be good, but too much can be bad for you, for your relationships.
Right, like with anything else, moderation is key.
Exactly.
What happens when those rose-colored glasses become blinders? What are the risks of letting this delusional thinking just run wild?
Well, it can really mess with your mental health.
Okay.
When these delusional disorders go untreated, they can contribute to things like depression, social isolation. In some cases, they can even lead to, legal trouble.
Oh, wow.
Or even, in extreme cases, harm to yourself or others.
Right. That's a good point, that while a little delusion might help, too much can have really serious consequences.
Yeah, absolutely. And even on like a day-to-day basis, delusional thinking can make your relationships really hard.
Yeah, I can imagine.
If you think about it, if someone's convinced they're always right, never wrong,
right,
it's going to be tough to have a good relationship with them.
Right. It's like they're living in their own little world.
Yeah.
And anyone who disagrees is wrong or against them.
Exactly.
That sounds frustrating.
It can be, yeah, for both people, the person with the delusion and the people around them.
Right.
And this distorted view of reality can lead to some pretty bad decisions.
Okay, like what?
Like, imagine someone who's convinced they're being spied on.
Okay.
They might become a recluse, suspicious of everyone, even lash out at people who haven't done anything wrong.
Yeah, that's a good example of how delusion can really take over and cause damage.
Right.
And, we talked earlier about how people with that success delusion can be really resistant to change.
Yeah.
Is that connected to this distorted reality?
Oh, absolutely. They might hold on to that inflated self-image even when it's not working for them anymore, even when it's clearly causing problems. And this can hold them back from personal growth, learning from their mistakes. It can even sabotage good opportunities.
It's like if they're trapped.
Yeah, in this bubble they made, unable to see they need to change or adapt.
So is there any research on why this happens? Like, why do some people develop these messed up thinking patterns?
Well, there's a theory called the dysfunctional cognitive processing theory.
Okay.
I know, it's a mouthful.
It is.
But it basically says that delusions come from these messed up thinking patterns.
Okay.
These people, they jump to conclusions, ignore evidence that contradicts their beliefs.
Right.
And they misinterpret social cues.
So their brains are processing information in a way that just reinforces what they already believe.
Exactly.
Even if it doesn't make sense.
Exactly. And that makes it really hard for them to think rationally, to look at things objectively, and to challenge themselves.
This all really shows how important balance is.
Yeah.
Like, a little self-belief is great, but when it turns into delusion,
right,
it can go bad.
Yeah.
It's about finding that middle ground
Yeah.
between confidence and seeing ourselves and the world realistically.
You nailed it. It's about using that confidence without letting it become something that hurts you or your relationships.
Right.
And the good news is there are things you can do to build real healthy confidence without going into that danger zone of delusion.
Okay, that's what I wanted to hear.
Yeah.
Because this is all interesting.
Yeah.
But I think people listening are thinking, okay, how does this apply to me?
Right.
What can we actually do to build that good kind of confidence? The kind that helps us without leading us astray.
That's a great question, and that's what we're going to talk about now. We're going to shift from the dangers of delusion to actionable steps you can take to build real confidence.
Let's do it.
Okay, so one of the best things you can do is focus on providing value to others instead of always seeking external validation.
So less about look at me and more about how can I help?
Yes, exactly. When you shift your focus to making a difference, your confidence will come from your actions and the good you're doing. It's a much better way to feel good about yourself than always needing other people's approval.
Right, it's like shifting from me to we.
Exactly.
What else can we do to build this healthy confidence?
Here's a big one. Stop comparing yourself to others.
Oh yeah, easier said than done.
I know, but seriously, drop the comparison game. It just makes you doubt yourself and feel bad. There will always be someone who seems to be doing better than you, but focusing on them will just chip away at your confidence and steal your joy.
It's hard, especially with social media, everyone's showing off their best selves.
I know, but it's a losing game. Remember, everyone's on their own journey. Focus on your own path. Celebrate your progress. You're not in competition with anyone else.
I like that. It's about recognizing we're all different. And that's fine. Our differences are what make us special. Speaking of differences, what about our weaknesses? Should we just pretend they're not there?
Actually, acknowledging our weaknesses is important for real confidence. It's about accepting we're not perfect and always trying to improve. Denying your weaknesses just creates blind spots and stops you from reaching your full potential.
So it's not about being perfect, it's about being okay with being a work in progress.
Exactly. Don't be afraid to admit where you need to grow and ask for help in those areas. That willingness to learn can be really empowering.
It's kind of the opposite of what you'd think, but it makes sense. It's like saying, hey, I'm not perfect and that's okay. I'm willing to learn.
Yeah.
Speaking of learning, what about mistakes?
Yeah.
We all make them, but they can really hurt your confidence. How do we deal with them?
Well, instead of beating yourself up over mistakes, try to own them and see them as chances to learn. It shows you're responsible and willing to grow. Everyone makes mistakes. It's human. People with real confidence are the ones who can learn from those mistakes and keep moving forward.
So change the story from I messed up, I'm a failure, to I made a mistake, what did I learn?
Exactly. That's what builds true confidence. It's about seeing challenges as opportunities and setbacks as temporary bumps.
Okay, so we've talked about helping others, owning our strengths and weaknesses, and learning from mistakes. What about how we talk to ourselves? Does that matter for confidence?
Absolutely. The words you use have a huge impact on how you see yourself. Pay attention to your self-talk and try to avoid putting yourself down.
Like cut out the I'm so stupid and I can't do anything right.
Exactly. Those thoughts just chip away at your confidence and become a self-fulfilling prophecy. If you keep telling yourself you're not good enough, you'll start to believe it. Instead, use words that encourage and empower you.
Like I'm capable, I'm learning, I'm making progress.
Yes. Affirm your strengths, acknowledge your effort, and celebrate your wins, even the small ones. And it's not just about what you say to yourself, it's also about what you say to others. Avoid putting others down to make yourself feel better.
So be mindful of how our words affect both ourselves and others.
Right.
It's about creating a good, supportive environment, both inside and out. What about body language? Does that matter for confidence?
Totally. Your nonverbal cues say a lot about how confident you are, sometimes even more than words. Try to have good posture, make eye contact, and really listen when people are talking.
So like projecting confidence even if you don't feel it?
Yeah.
Is that where fake it till you make it comes in?
Well, it's not really faking it. It's more about making your body language match the confidence you want to have. When you stand tall, make eye contact, and act confident, it can actually help you feel more confident.
So it's not just our thoughts and words, it's also how we carry ourselves. It's a whole body approach to confidence. What about humor? Does that fit in?
Absolutely. Don't take yourself too seriously. Let yourself have fun, be playful, embrace humor. It can help you get over self-doubt and keep things in perspective.
It's like giving ourselves permission to be imperfect, to lighten up.
Exactly. It can help you bounce back from setbacks and keep your confidence from turning into arrogance. A little humility goes a long way.
True, humility and humor, great partners for building healthy confidence.
Okay.
We've covered a lot. Anything else we should keep in mind as we work on our confidence?
Yes, 2 more key points. First, know your strengths and your limits. Figure out what you're good at and work on getting even better. But also be honest about what you're not good at and don't be afraid to ask for help.
So know what you bring to the table, good and bad.
Right. That self-awareness can help you stay grounded and not overestimate yourself or take on too much. And speaking of staying grounded, that brings me to the last point. Practice mindfulness.
Mindfulness, we hear that a lot. What does it mean, and how can it help with confidence?
Mindfulness is just about being present in the moment, aware of your thoughts and feelings without judging them. It's about noticing those negative thoughts, the self-doubt that creeps in, and choosing to challenge them instead of letting them control you.
So being aware of ourselves, catching those unhelpful thoughts, and choosing to focus on something better.
Exactly. Mindfulness can also help you stay grounded in reality. It keeps you from getting carried away with unrealistic expectations or thinking too highly of yourself. It's about balance, confidence, with a dose of realism.
Okay, so we've got a whole toolkit for building healthy confidence. Focus on value, celebrate strengths, acknowledge weaknesses, own mistakes, use good language, be present, don't be too serious, know yourself, and practice mindfulness. Wow, that's a lot. But I'm already feeling a shift in my thinking.
It's a journey, not a sprint, and everyone's path to confidence is different. Try these things out and see what works for you. What helps one person might not help another, and that's okay.
This has been so helpful. But before we go on, I think it's important to go back to something we mentioned earlier, recognizing when things are going too far, when that good delusion becomes a problem. How can we tell if someone's thinking is delusional, either in ourselves or in others? What are the warning signs?
Great point, and it's important to be aware. First, look for beliefs that don't change, convictions that someone holds on to no matter what the evidence says.
Like they've got this idea stuck in their head and nothing can change their mind.
Exactly. That stubbornness, not being able to see things differently or have any doubt, that's a red flag. Also, watch for any big changes in behavior.
Like suddenly avoiding people, being irritable or aggressive, or just acting strangely.
Yeah, those changes can sometimes mean there's some delusional thinking going on, especially if there are other signs too. And lastly, notice if someone's having trouble functioning in everyday life.
So if their beliefs are messing up their work, relationships, or just their overall well-being, that's a serious sign they need help.
Absolutely. And remember, not all delusions are the same. They can range from things that could possibly happen in real life, although unlikely, to things that are just impossible and defy logic.
Can you give us some examples of the different types of delusions? I think it would help people to understand the range of what we're talking about.
Sure. One common type is erotomanic delusion, where someone believes another person, often someone famous or important, is in love with them.
So like they might be convinced a celebrity is sending them secret messages or that a musician is writing songs about them even though they've never met.
Exactly. They might misinterpret coincidences or make up evidence to support their belief. Then there's grandiose delusion, where someone has this inflated sense of their own importance, power, knowledge, or even identity. They might think they have a special mission, supernatural powers, or are a famous historical figure.
Like they're living out a fantasy, but they truly believe it.
Precisely. And then there's jealous delusion, where someone is certain their partner is cheating on them, even with no proof. They might constantly accuse their partner, become really controlling, and even try to catch them in the act.
That sounds like a recipe for disaster in a relationship. Their mind is creating this story of betrayal, even if it's completely false. What about persecutor delusions?
With those, someone believes they're being attacked, harassed, cheated, or plotted against. They might be sure their neighbors are spying on them, their coworkers are out to get them, or the government is after them.
So they're living in a constant state of fear and suspicion, always feeling threatened. That sounds really tough.
It can be, yeah, for both the person with the delusion and the people around them. And it's important to remember that these delusions aren't real, even if they feel very real to the person experiencing them.
Are there any other types of delusions we should know about?
Yes, there's somatic delusion, where someone believes they have a physical problem, even though medical tests show nothing. They might be convinced they have parasites, a rare disease, or that their body is decaying, even though it's not.
So their mind is making up physical feelings or symptoms, even though there's no physical cause. That sounds pretty scary.
It can be very frightening and confusing, and it's important to get help if you or someone you know is experiencing this. And then there are mixed delusions, where there's no one main delusion, and unspecified delusions, where it's hard to figure out what the main belief is.
Okay, so there are lots of different delusions, each with its own characteristics and impact on people's lives. It's good to know about these so we can spot potential problems and get help if needed.
Exactly. And if you think you or someone you know is struggling with delusional thinking, it's crucial to get professional help. Don't try to deal with this alone. There are treatments that can help people manage their delusions and have good lives.
Absolutely. There's no shame in asking for help. In fact, it's a sign of strength to admit when you need it And thankfully, like you said, there are treatments available.
Yes, treatment often involves medication and therapy, such as cognitive behavioral therapy or CBT.
Okay, CBT. We hear that a lot. Can you explain it briefly and how it helps with delusional thinking?
Think of CBT as a way to train your thoughts. It helps you identify and change those unhelpful or distorted thought patterns that feed your delusions. You don't erase the beliefs, you learn to recognize them, question them, and think in a more balanced, realistic way.
So you're learning to catch those thought traps and turn those negative thoughts into something better.
Exactly. And it can be really helpful for people to manage their delusions, feel less distressed, and live better lives. It gives them the tools to handle their challenges in a healthier way.
That's great to hear. So wrapping up this deep dive, it seems like the main takeaway is that it's all about finding that balance. A little self-belief, even a touch of what we call delusional confidence can be a good thing, but we need to stay grounded and get help if things get out of hand.
Well said. It's all about awareness. When we understand these things, we can use confidence to our advantage while staying connected to reality. We can navigate the complexities of our minds with more clarity and purpose.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation. I've definitely learned a lot today, and I hope our listener has too.
Me too. It's always fascinating to explore topics like this, topics that challenge what we think we know and show us how complex we are as humans.
Absolutely. And as always, we encourage you to keep exploring this. Think about those aha moments you had during our conversation. What stuck with you? What surprised you? And most importantly, how can you use what you've learned in your own life? Maybe you'll notice that success delusion in yourself or others. Or maybe you'll focus on building healthy confidence that empowers you without taking you down the wrong path.
Remember, this is just the start of your exploration. Keep asking questions, stay curious, and don't underestimate how powerful it is to look inward. And if we can leave you with one last thought, it's this. Embrace the journey of getting to know yourself, and never be afraid to ask for help when you need it.
Very well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into success, confidence, and delusion. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep exploring.
Okay, so we've talked about those warning signs, and it seems like the big thing is getting help if you see those red flags.
Yeah, definitely.
But, I think it's important to say that we're all on a spectrum here.
Right.
Just because some of this success delusion stuff sounds familiar.
Doesn't mean you need therapy.
Exactly.
It's about being aware of it,
Mm-hmm.
understanding how these beliefs might be working for you,
Right.
and knowing when they could start to cause problems.
Well, exactly. And like we've said,
Yeah.
getting help is a good thing, not a bad thing.
All right.
If those beliefs are causing trouble or you're worried about someone.
Absolutely. And thankfully, there are treatments that work.
There are, yeah.
Like we mentioned earlier, it often involves medication and therapy,
Mm-hmm.
specifically CBT.
Right. Cognitive behavioral therapy.
Okay, so CBT, we've heard that term before.
Yeah.
Can you give us like a quick rundown of what it is and how it can help with this?
Sure. Imagine CBT like a personal trainer for your thoughts.
Okay.
It helps you figure out and then challenge those unhelpful thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
the distorted thinking patterns that might be feeding the delusions.
Okay.
It's not about getting rid of those beliefs completely.
Right.
It's more about learning to recognize them,
Yeah.
question them,
Okay.
and develop healthier ways of thinking.
So you learn to spot those thought traps
Exactly.
and reframe them into something more positive.
Yeah, exactly.
And you said this can be really effective
It can be, yeah, really effective.
in helping people manage their delusions,
Right.
feel less distressed,
Mm-hmm.
and just live better lives overall.
Exactly. It gives them tools to handle things in a healthier way.
That's great. So wrapping up this deep dive into success, confidence, and delusion,
Mm-hmm.
it seems like the big thing is finding that sweet spot.
Yeah.
A little self-belief.
Right.
Even a little bit of that delusional confidence can be a good motivator.
It can.
But we got to stay grounded
Yes.
and get help if things get out of control.
Absolutely.
It's about awareness,
Yeah.
understanding these concepts,
Yeah.
so we can use confidence to our advantage,
Right.
but also stay connected to reality.
Exactly.
It's about navigating all the tricky parts of the human mind
Mm-hmm.
with more clarity and purpose.
Well said.
This has been so eye-opening. I feel like I've learned a lot,
Me too.
and I hope our listeners have too.
I hope so.
As always, we encourage you to keep exploring this.
Yeah.
Think about those aha moments you had.
Right.
What really resonated with you? What surprised you?
Mm-hmm.
And how can you use this in your own life?
Exactly.
Maybe you'll start to see that success delusion in yourself or others.
Yeah.
Or maybe you'll focus on building that healthy confidence
Right.
in a way that helps you without leading you down the wrong path.
It's all about finding what works for you.
Right.
This is just the start.
Yeah.
Keep asking questions, stay curious, and don't forget how powerful it is to reflect on your own thoughts and feelings.
Right.
If there's one last thing to remember, it's this. Embrace that journey of getting to know yourself and never be afraid to ask for help when you need it.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into success, confidence, and delusion.
Thanks for having me.
Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep exploring.